Welcome guys! In my recent videos showing mouse movement with low sensitivity using a short-range scope, I got a question from djdalgaard who wanted to know how I spot people so well. Spotting people is difficult, and if you overlook an enemy, it could easily be the end of you. Especially in first-person only mode, because if you can see an enemy, then he will also be able to see you. But while spotting enemies are difficult, there are some basic rules as to how you can improve your spotting skills. So here it is guys, this is my tutorial on how to best spot enemies in Pubg. The topics will be prerequisites, graphic settings, enemy contrast, eye scanning, what to look for and where to look. Prerequisites. Position yourself close enough to the monitor to be able to actually see small pixel movements. My recommendation is about 45 centimeters on a 27-inch monitor, as that is my personal optimal view distance. This will of course vary depending on your eyesight, but definitely don't be too far away from the monitor. Graphic settings. Now I have made a video already about the best graphic settings to spot enemies, but I'll just go over this briefly. Screen scale at 120, as that makes your image clearer. Anti-aliasing at ultra, as that makes your image calmer, thereby easier to spot real movement. View distance at ultra, as you avoid too much random crap rendering in all the time that could be mistaken for actual movement. Textures at low or very low to be able to better see contrast. I personally have this at low to medium because that just looks better. But I definitely never go higher than medium, as the complexity of textures are just too much there. And finally shadows at medium, as you don't want too many shadows which can be mistaken for a false enemy contrast. Enemy contrast. As a general rule, what you're looking for is contrast. On a dark background, an enemy will appear brighter, and on a light background, an enemy will appear darker. Most backgrounds in Pubg will be bright, with the exception of the rain version of the map, where some backgrounds will tend to appear very dark and much darker than your enemy. Flashes from gunshots are also a great thing to spot for. Eye scanning. Now this is the really cool part of spotting enemies. Eye scanning is how you look at your surroundings and how you focus your eyes. Eye scanning patterns. When spotting for enemies, you should be scanning in patterns. All eye scanning should be based on priority, which is a mix of common sense and your risk assessment based on your experience. Always focus in the center of the scan area and then relax your eye, with the exception of the priority focus scan. Now I'll briefly go over the 4 types of scan area, and then I'm gonna show you some footage where I placed the scan area on top of the actual gameplay. The wide scan. Scanning large areas when moving your camera around rapidly requires the widest focus area and therefore requires you to relax your eyes. The horizontal scan is what you use when scanning the horizon of open areas. The priority scan is when spotting for enemies in smaller sections of your field of view, for instance windows. And then we have the priority focus scan, which is when your other scans pick up on something and you need to focus on a tiny area, possibly an enemy. Shift your focus to priority focus scan when you see something fishy, for instance by zooming in on it with your scope, and look for pixel movements. I've studied my own eye movement carefully and placed these scan areas on top of my own gameplay to show you, as precisely as possible, how I scan for enemies using my eyes. It looks rather artificial, but you can actually do this quite easily with your eyes. Rapidly shift focus area when moving around and scan for contrast and unexpected color variations. Take a moment to observe how I scan the area using the different types of scan, and I'll get back to you in just a moment. Okay, so what to look for? We already talked about contrast because you need to look for contrast. But when you find that contrast, you need to also look for color variations. This could be the enemy clothing or the enemy helm. Looking for color variation is super important when priority focus scanning bushes for enemies. Enemies have color variations, bushes do not. Also, look for anything that seems out of place, like a guy standing next to a tree or a shadow in an odd location. Where to look? Knowing where to look is also hugely important, and it will again involve priority based on your risk assessment and experience. What I do is I risk assess every direction, and the direction I feel most safe from will be my lowest priority. When running towards the center of the circle, I have priority on my sides, then my back and then my front. Because you want to scan for enemies who could be a threat to you and not enemies who you could just get an easy kill on. This is important because if you focus in front of you too much, you might end up getting that extra kill by shooting someone in the back. Meanwhile, someone running alongside you just stops and kills you based on the sound he heard. So remember, have the proper distance to your screen. Use the proper graphic settings, scan your surroundings using the appropriate priority and eye scanning technique, and then look in the right direction and find those contrast and color variations. Now that's all I had for you guys in this video. I hope you found this helpful, and if you have more questions, just feel free to put them in the comments below, and I'll see you next time!